Hello everybody, today I wanted to have a look at one of Lord Byron's most famous poems, So We'll Go No More A-Roving. Now I'm not going to get wrapped up too much in context and biography today because quite frankly that's an issue for another video and I do primarily want to focus on the poem. But it's fair to say that Lord Byron is one of the most flamboyant and notorious of the major English Romantic poets. He's considered a second-generation Romantic, along with the likes of Shelley and Keats, which means that much of his poetical output came after the likes of Coleridge and Wordsworth. Now, it's worth considering that he was very much a celebrity in his era. He was a high-profile individual, and he was known for his aristocratic excesses, which included racking up quite large debts, and perhaps more than anything, he was known for his numerous sex scandals. So he had many love affairs with both men and women, and remember, this is in a time when bisexuality was considered a crime, and there were also rumours of a quite scandalous and incestuous relationship with his half-sister. So Byron was very much someone who was bogged down by scandal, so much to the extent that he felt that he had to leave England in order to leave his scandalous reputation behind. He travelled quite extensively across Europe and Italy, and eventually made his way to Greece, which is where he caught a fever and died at the age of 36. So he is regarded really as living a very hedonistic and chaotic lifestyle. Now, this word hedonistic is very significant when we talk about Byron. It essentially means the pursuit of pleasure to the extent of overindulgence. And like many second-generation romantics, much of Byron's poetry concerns the transience of life and the passing of time. One of his lovers, Lady Caroline Lamb, quite famously said that Byron is mad, bad and dangerous to know. Byron himself, when speaking about pleasure and hedonism, said that pleasure's a sin and sometimes sin's a pleasure. So really this encapsulates how Byron led much of his life. The poem itself was written whilst Byron was living in Venice, and it was included in a letter to his friend Thomas Moore. He was feeling the ill effects, essentially he was hungover, he was feeling the ill effects of a night out at the carnival, and he melodramatically declares in this poem that he can no longer continue with this life of reckless overindulgence. The poem essentially shows the fatigue of age and exertion conquering the restlessness of youth. So Byron had just turned 29 when he wrote this, and he was starting to feel quite old due to the nights of debauchery that he engaged in his youth. So in this letter to Thomas Moore, written in 1817, he says that at present I'm on the invalid regimen myself, essentially meaning that he's not feeling very well. The carnival, that is, the latter part of it, and sitting up later nights had knocked me up a little. So he's feeling drained from these real late nights at carnival. But it is over now and it is Lent, with all its abstinence and sacred music. So he's kind of, there's a tinge of regret about his over-excessive lifestyle. Though I did not dissipate much upon the whole, yet I find the sword wearing out the scabbard, though I have but just turned the corner of 29. So although he's just turned 29, again, he's using this metaphor of the sword wearing out the scabbard to say that he's feeling emotionally and physically drained due to his, as I've said, quite hedonistic lifestyle. So if we look at the title itself, So We'll Go No More A-Roving. This word roving means to travel constantly without a fixed destination, to wander aimlessly. And in some ways, this is a fitting metaphor, really, for Byron's life. Within the poem, he laments a life that has gone, his youth that has gone. And we need to really question whether this aimless roving is something personal to Byron or whether it is, a wider metaphor for life. The reference to wheel, perhaps inferring that this is addressed to somebody, and that he has a partner in his roving exploits, perhaps indicates that this is an issue that all humanity will face, and that age, death, and the transience of time are inevitable, that we all face them. So if we look at the poem itself, so we'll go no more a-roving so late into the night, though the heart be still as loving and the moon be still as bright. This word so at the start almost makes it seem quite conversational in tone. There is like they're addressing a friend or a lover. Now, we're unaware of who either Byron's partner in Roving is. I mean, it could be Thomas More himself. But again, this could infer that this passing of time and the effects of age are something that's universal. So late into the night. So he admits here that he's been staying up too late and he's been wandering the streets late in the night. So the darkness and the night are associated immediately with Byron's hedonistic lifestyle. Though the heart be still as loving and the moon be still as bright. So the moon is a traditional symbol of love, femininity and fertility. It's quite a common trope, particularly in romantic poetry, actually. So he's saying, actually, the moon is still quite bright. So perhaps Byron here is trying to assert that he is still sexually capable, so to speak, and that he can still enjoy these quite debauched nights out if necessary. I've underlined the words heart and loving, and I'll return to these at the end of the poem. It's also worth noting that on these last two lines, think about how they are grammatically structured. Though the heart be still as loving and the moon be still as bright. Now, this is an example of syntactic parallelism, which means that the lines are quite similar in their grammatic structure, in their word order, which is basically what syntax is. And this creates a quite satisfying and gentle rhythm, which is quite ironically lyrical for somebody who's essentially bemoaning the effects of a drunken night out. And this is quite fitting with the quite constant AB rhyme scheme that we see throughout the poem as well. So this syntactic parallelism that we see creates a somewhat gentle rhythm, which is quite ironic considering he's basically moaning that he feels a bit rough after an excessive night out. For the sword outwears its sheath, and the soul wears out the breast, and the heart must pause to breathe, and love itself have rest. Now, again, we see this return to the sword outwearing its cover, its sheath. So up in that corner, that's a picture of a sword and its sheath. So it's quite difficult not to view this somewhat as a phallic symbol, and perhaps relating to Byron's scandalous lifestyle. And obviously it links to physical decay, the fact that he's feeling quite physically drained from his excessive nights at the carnival. And the soul wears out the breast, and the heart must pause to breathe, and love itself have rest. So here we see an awareness of his own mortality. There is no solace that the soul is immortal. There is no solace found in nature either, unlike poets such as Wordsworth. There seems to be a quite blunt awareness of mortality here. And this is really quite important because very often when we look at romantic poets, it's very easy to group them as a universal group with all similar ideas. But really, when we look at somebody like Wordsworth and Byron, their ideas and principles are really quite radically different. And the heart must pause to breathe. He needs this time to rest. Okay, we've got use of anaphora here with the and, which creates this sense of overwhelming weariness and world weariness. And there are some quite bleak undertones here in this second stanza. And really how our own thoughts and feelings and actions can take this physical toll on our body, and the soul wears out its breast. Like the body is quite frail, and it's kind of feeling the ill effects of Byron's actions. And here at the end, that love must have rest, we get the sense of physical and emotional exertion, and that even human love is ultimately subject to the passing of time and eventually death. So again, this theme of transience that runs through the poem. Though the night was made for loving, and the day returns too soon, yet we'll go no more a-roving by the light of the moon. So the night here provides us a cover and anonymity for Byron. And we really see here this use of euphemistic language. The night was made for loving. So this euphemistic language is really being used to veil some quite scandalous and debauchery, this scandalous debauchery and sexual acts. And if we look here in the first stanza, when he says, though the heart be still as loving, is he really referring to loving somebody, or is he merely talking about the act of sex? So here we see the use of euphemistic language to kind of veil and to cover up these acts of debauchery. Yet we'll go, and the day returns too soon. So again, reference to transience and the passing of time. Yet we'll go no more a-roving by the light of the moon. Now notice here that the bright moon from stanza 1 has now been downgraded to just light. So there is a sense of degradation and deflation here, that it's kind of been downscaled. And perhaps here, the light of the moon is now starting to shed light on Byron's behaviour. Is there a sense of true regret at the end of this poem about the life that he has led? Or is this really just half-hearted regret? And I suppose we are left to question whether this ending is convincing. Because from what we can gather, really, the light of the moon appears to be able to survive until Byron's hangover is cured. And despite this melodrama and this almost self-mocking tone of the poem, we can reasonably suspect that Byron will go a-roving once more. So, looking at some of the key themes within the poem, there's an overwhelming sense of world weariness and an awareness of one's own mortality that's imbued within the poem. And unlike other romantic poets, such as Wordsworth, Byron found no solace and no relief in nature. His notoriety and his celebrity meant that people expected a lot from him. He was a well-known man, and he felt the need to be constantly travelling, constantly on the move, constantly roving, for want of a better word, in order to escape his numerous scandals, whilst quite ironically often finding himself in new ones as a result. Now, there is also an extensive use of repetition within this poem, and I would encourage you to reread it and either circle or highlight any instances of repetition of phrases or words that you find. I mentioned before about the use of anaphora and the syntactic parallelism used in the first stanza in order to create a sense of almost grammatical repetition. And all of this contributes to a lack of movement in the poem. And this emphasises the sense of weariness, tiredness and stasis, things staying still, things not changing. It's almost as if, as the poem puts it, the heart needs to pause to breathe. And we also get a sense of ageing and the physical decay of the body. All of this is wrapped up within Byron's hedonistic, reckless and ruinous lifestyle. And we also get passing references to Byron's sexual relationships. I'm thinking here of the reference to the sword outwearing its sheath, which could be viewed as a phallic symbol and is obviously a sign of the physical decay of the body. And like many second-generation romantics, Byron is concerned with the transience of life, the idea that life is fleeting, that death is inevitable, and that we are all subject to the passing of time. So just to finish up on the form and structure of the poem, as you can probably tell, it's got a quite simplistic ABAB regular rhyme scheme, and this regular rhyme scheme, along with the refrain that's used in the poem, gives it a cyclical structure, perhaps suggesting that there is no real escape from age, mortality, and the passing of time. The poem's also written in regular 4-line stanzas known as quatrains, and it's written in part in iambic tetrameter. So this regular rhyme scheme and rhythm meant that this poem was quite often later set to music. Now, this wasn't Byron's original intention, but I dare say that if you were to YouTube this poem, a musical rendition would be one of the first results to come up. So this ordered, regular rhyme scheme and the use of ordered, regular quatrains juxtaposes quite sharply with Byron's disordered, chaotic and hedonistic lifestyle. So in some sense there is a quite jarring conflict between the poem's form and content. So those are some thoughts on the poem So We'll Go No More A Roving. I hope that you've at least found them useful in some way. Thank you.